right, Beats, Beds, and Browns. I'm Joe Skibby. We are here December 17th, wrapping up season 6 with Derek Drake of Ditto Foods, a trailblazer in the game, culinary artist turned hydroponic farmer, changing the landscape of local food access one head of lettuce at a time. Founder and CEO of Ditto Foods out of Chicago Heights. His brother's mission is rooted in community empowerment, nutrient-dense produce, and making sure every table has fresh, clean greens. Whether it's hydroponic basil or partnerships that feed neighborhoods, he's living proof that growing local is growing power. Welcome to Beats, Beds, and Browns, the one and only Derek Drake.
It's a hell of an intro there. It's a hell of an intro. I'm like, who is he talking about?
Well, the one, the only, man. We really appreciate your time this evening. And again, we're going to kick this interview off like we do all the others with the iconic question: where you at, where you been, and where you going?
Ooh, where am I at? Where am I at is an interesting place in my life where I am, I just turned 46. Yeah, just turned 46. So it's that back.
Here we are making our 40s look good.
Look, man, I feel good about it until I, try to stand up and my knees remind me 46. Or the arthritis is starting to let me know.
Did I get hit by a truck overnight? What happened?
Yeah, exactly. So where I am is a very interesting place. So, you look at life differently when you're in your latter 40s, because, you're like, what have I done? So, to look at your questions, you start to think that to yourself. What have I done? Where am I? And where do I want to be when I retire? And so it's good. I mean, I'm in a good place where I feel like I get to call the shots that I take, which is a cool place to be, where I don't feel as though I am necessarily beholden to anyone other than my family and myself and my community as well. And also to the ancestors and to the spirit guides and everybody that kind of helps me along this journey. So I'm feeling good. I connect with my spirit, and that part of me is a huge part of who I am right now. Because who I used to be was like a kid growing up in hardcore Pentecostal, hellfire and brimstone type of thing. Every day, everything is sending you to hell. I say when I write the book of my life, the first line of my book is going to be, I had my first exorcism when I was 13. Talk about a hook, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel good. I feel spiritually aligned. I feel like I know what my work is. I always say there's a difference between a job and your work. My job pays the bills, and my work pays my spirit. It feeds my spirit. I always say I do it because, if heaven exists, I want to make sure I secure me a spot.
Hedging your bets. Yeah.
Might as well. And at the same time, feel good, doing something good for the community. People, appreciate it. And it fills me up. So that's where I am right now. I am happy, healthy, in love, perplexed by my children, anxious about life on the back end of my life, and how the milestones that I've set throughout my life and how I've accomplished those things. And every day I drive up my driveway, I'm so grateful, because I see this, I live in like the big white farmhouse in the country, in the country, on a farm. So it's like the whole thing with the big red barn and the shed with the chickens in the back and my ducks in it. So it's like this incredible like farmer life that I've kind of created for myself. And so I feel I'm in a really good place.
It is an incredible life. It really is when you reflect on it. And, and just speaking on your spirituality directly, I hear you've got a past. I'm a Reformed, confirmed Catholic myself. I really find spirituality in nature when I'm walking in the garden and my neighbors have come by a couple times and I've been talking to the insects. Like, can you talk to me about how you find spirituality on the farm and what that feels like?
Oh, I love it. Because for me, it is, I always say, if you want to know God, go to nature, because that is the closest thing to God that we have. Animal nature and babies is the closest thing to God that we have, because it is unencumbered by processes and, trying to think about, overthinking anything. They just move as they were created to move. And so for me, it is a spiritual, my family calls me Dr. Doolittle. We live, I feed all the animals outside, and even the mice. Found out we had in our backyard, at our other old house, we had mice. And so I would, in the field mice, and I would leave a little bowl out, just like it was like those incense burner bowls, the little ones that you put the little cone incense in. I had one of those, and I put food in it for the mice, and they would come up and grab it and run back and come up and grab it. And I knew that I was connected with nature when one day I heard this tapping on the window. I'm like, what the hell is that noise? And just tapping on the window. I go downstairs, and it's a family of ducks knocking on my back door because the bowl was empty that I fed them out of.
Yeah. Where's our food, buddy?
Man, if that's not communing with God and connecting to God through nature, I don't know what it is. I don't know what is. So that's really how I see when I'm outside with my chickens. I talk to my chickens, and you have these interactions that, probably aren't what you think they are. But I feel like, you have this connection, you have this understanding. Like, I know the personalities of my chickens. And so, like, I interact with them differently. So it's you talk about watching insects. I can watch an ant hill, or like ants working. I can watch ants working for hours because it's so fascinating.
Yeah, any of
And so that's where I find
bees, ants, any of the
yeah,
hive extinct animals that
yeah, yeah,
it's crazy how intentional they are with all their movements. So,
yeah, yeah.
well, I intended to talk a
And
lot
so
about hydroponics today, but I didn't know you were on a farm. So tell me how you balance and the different makeup of both the hydroponic setup and then the farm where you reside.
yeah, so the fortunate thing with the hydroponics is that it's in a 40-foot shipping container, so it's contained inside of this, steel box. And so I farm out of there. It's just 320 square feet. In that 320 square feet, we can grow up to 3 acres of produce. And so I say, is when nerds become farmers. They, they use technology.
Efficiency.
Yeah, right. It's a way to utilize technology to mimic nature in a way that allows for plants, food, herbs, these things to have exactly what it needs to grow to its fullest potential. And it's the same thing with watching animals, and it's the same thing with humans, how we're all connected in the exact same way, because we need the exact same nutrients and minerals, and we need all of the sunlight, and we need all of the exact same things. And so it's interesting with the hydroponics is that you're recreating nature. And so in a way you kind of feel like, a little micro god
Yeah.
in this little world. But I love it because for me, when we started this business, it was really all about mobility. It was really all about being able to bring a food system to an community or to an area that did not have a food system, whether that food system is a farm, or that food system is a farmer's market, or that food system is a grocery store, or that food system is a restaurant. And that's kind of how it all started for me. Like, initially with the business, is that I wanted to do something in food, and it had to have some sort of community give back piece to it. And that's kind of how our business, Ditto Foods, kind of came out. Um, but in the beauty of where I am right now is that I have this like high tech farming, nerds being farmers, growing food, and it's a farm right next, not next to, but on the same property where I get to farm, where I get chickens and my ducks, and I got to go out and clean up the chicken shit and make sure the feed is gone good and making sure that they're it's so you have those parts of it also. So it's kind of a cool little dichotomy. And again, it's one of those things when you stand back and look at it, it's like, this is kind of cool. I get to grow food and also raise animals and have that. We always have eggs. So
Delicious eggs, no
I can't
doubt.
even remember the last time I bought an egg. It's been years since I've actually bought eggs.
Made it through the egg shortage.
Yeah.
Mark
Yep.
safe.
Yep.
Um, so again, there's no produce. It's a livestock farm, and then you do all the produce through the semi trailer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the hydroponic growing is almost, you're talking about nerding out and mad scientists. Like you have to mix and add chemicals and keep balance. Can you talk through that? And is that a challenging thing, or is that a framework and a mix and you just dump it in, or how does that work?
No, it's minerals and things that we purchase, and it's just mixing it, diluting it in water. There are a lot of different companies out there that sell hydroponic nutrients, and it's about finding the company that uses the right materials to create the minerals, the mix that we use. Because a lot of stuff out there is synthetics and out of filler and things like that, so you're not really feeding the plants the things that they need. So it's about sourcing the right nutrients and the right food for your plants in the first place. And once you've identified that, it's some science to it, it's some math to it, because you have to the right ratio. But the beauty of the system that we use is, and with technology, where technology comes in, is that it can monitor the levels of the nutrients in the water as the water is running over the sensors and going, being recirculated through the system. There are sensors built into it that's constantly reading the nutrient levels in the water, the EC and the pH of the water, which ultimately tells me how much nutrients are in the water, the conductivity of that, and how the pH balance of my water, making sure we're constantly. So with the system, and where the technology piece comes in, is you can set your parameters, and the system itself will maintain those numbers. And there's some variation, because again, I always say nature is going to nature when nature natures, right? Even if you're trying to recreate nature inside of a steel box, nature is still going to nature, right?
Yeah.
So there's still things that you have to do to kind of make sure and pay attention to, because there's always powdery mildew, there's always fungus gnats, there's always some even if it is a closed room and you're contained, there's nature is micro that can get through the smallest little things. And so there are those the pest management, making sure that we're also very mindful of what we're using from a pesticide standpoint. So we only use we don't use any pesticides. We actually use a mixture of peroxide and water, which is actually beneficial for the plants as well, for the cellular development for the plants, as well as fighting a lot of the bacteria, a lot of the mildew and those things that want to come and kind of take over the plant, because it really builds up the cellular structure.
Nice. And I imagine you've got fans going constantly to make sure that
Oh yeah.
they
Oh yeah.
stand up and
Yeah. Constantly moving, again, we're recreating nature. There's wind in nature, and plants need wind, and so we make sure that we set and create an environment. I can say it can be -30 outside, and inside the farm is a perfect spring day.
and heating. Yeah, so heating elements is a piece of that. How is it powered? Is it electric? Is there a
It is.
generator? Or?
It's electric. So right now we have it tapped into the electrical source that connects to our house as well. You can always do solar. There are a lot of different options that you can use too, but it works best. We looked into solar just with the financial piece of, this is a business still. We got to make sure we're making good business decisions. And the solar for what we needed it for our house as well as the farm itself, it just didn't make sense. Now, if it were just the farm operating on its own, you don't need a whole lot when it comes to solar power to run it. So yeah.
So talk to me, you mentioned kind of the business of it. Talk to me about the business model and that 3 acres and 320 square foot is mind numbing how efficient that is. Are you guys doing the CSA model? Are you doing market gardening? What's the approach?
So we've kind of adjusted our business model over the years. One of the things that COVID really taught us is how to pivot and how to pivot in a way that still is the mission that still moves you forward, and it's not an arrested pivot where you're not moving forward. So initially we started as with CSAs and things like that because this was at the beginning of the pandemic, and so people were very much concerned about who was touching their food, and there was a lot of deliveries directly to people's houses, and so we were doing a CSA model initially where we were partnering with another company that did all the logistics in terms of delivering to the customers, and we just did what we did was farm. We would farm and grow, and then we would drop off what our harvest to the company that we were in partnership with, and they would then deliver it to our customer. And so we started out that way. And then, of course, through the pandemic, and initially it was also restaurants. But of course, during the pandemic, there were no restaurants.
Yeah.
So again, pivot. And so that's what we did, the whole CSA direct to consumer. And then once the world opened, I come from, hospitality, restaurants, contract food services and things like that. And so restaurants were, I was like, all right, let's get to these chefs, let's talk to these folks, let's get into these restaurants, get on these menus. And so we did that, where we worked with restaurants, and we were in grocery stores, and we were doing farmers markets. And so we were kind of doing a mix of retail, so to speak. And then we experienced some issues with the farm. Again, it's electric, it's technology, and sometimes things go wrong. And we had an HVAC issue. And so the HVAC went out, and you need to maintain an environment of 70 degrees, right? And this was in the summer when it was like the hottest, where it was the hottest summer we've ever had. It was one of those summers.
Never a good time, yeah.
And of course, it also happened on a Friday night. So going into a weekend, nobody could come, we couldn't get anybody to come out. And then we were trying to explain to them what it was. It was for the farm. And, they were like, oh, we don't do that. I'm like, no, it's just a regular HVAC unit on it. Yeah. So, and so that we couldn't get anybody out here for 3 days. And so I did everything possible to try to save the plants, but it just was too hot. I couldn't cool it down enough. And so I had to keep the lights out, because the light source is also part of the heating source. And so the system also, you set the temperature to 70 degrees, if it goes, 5 degrees above that, the system automatically shuts off a heating element. So that heating element can be the lights, because it's LED lights and they produce heat, or the actual HVAC unit itself. But if the HVAC unit is out itself, and now you just have the heat from the lights on the plants, the system shuts off the lights because that's the heat source. Yeah. And so now the system kept shutting the lights off. and so it was just like, and this was early on in the business. And it was almost a total loss. It was almost a total loss.
What does it take to recover from that? Is that 60 days? Is that 30 days?
To like a full recovery, you're looking at a good 30 days, 45 days. Even though it's controlled environment, you still have to wait for nature to do what it's going to do. There's the germinating period, then there's the stabilizing period, and then there's the actual growing, and then you want to get it to a certain amount, like a five
And did
ounce
you have to
head.
sterilize the whole thing at that point, or?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We did a complete clean out. Yeah, we did a complete clean out. And it was I was like, you know what? It's okay. It's we have sometimes resilience. You have to be resilient. So we cleaned everything out, started over. Of course, those restaurants that we had already moved on to other suppliers because they're restaurants. They need to have consistent.
Sure.
So we lost that business. And so I was like, all right, now we have to pivot again.
Again, yeah.
But this pivot was more towards I don't want to say like a sure thing, but it was pivoting more ultimately because I told you it's always about impacting the community. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to go directly to the community and work with the community centers, these places that have food pantries. They get grant funding to work with local farmers and to purchase from local farmers. And so I'll just go directly to the community and work directly with the community. And that's what I did. And it was still, again, it still was a part of the process. It just got there faster than I thought I would, because I wanted to do the whole restaurant thing because I'm from a restaurant world, and so I wanted to do
Yeah.
some really cool things for restaurants because you do have the ability to to grow in a controlled environment. I can work with chefs on doing some really fun and cool things like some wasabi arugula, or because you can play with science, changing
Yeah.
flavors and changing things depending on the inputs and how much red light do they get versus how much blue light, and all those things can change the structure of what you're growing. And so I was excited about that. And so we had to let go of that piece. And I was like, and I'm one of those people, like, everything happens for a reason. So I always have to try to find the lesson, get right to the lesson. All right, so what's the lesson? And so the lesson was, this is who you're supposed to be. This was the point of all of this. So get directly to the work.
We talk to a lot of interviewees, and that kind of throughput is in entrepreneurism, right? And being able to
Yeah.
shift. We run our own business, and everything that at a certain time seems catastrophic ends up becoming a strength or a positive in the
Yeah.
back end. So, how did this turn into a positive? Was it just a shift in market, or?
It was a shift in market, but it was also it was a shift in focus in terms of kind of, because it was always a part of the vision anyway to get into the community and work and grow food, but it kind of tightened, like when you go to the eye doctor and they like is it one or two, and then you pick because it's just getting clearer with each decision that you make. And so that was what it became, is like, okay, with each decision that I'm making, it's getting clearer and clearer what I'm supposed to do. And so it just forced me to get into the community faster. And so I dove right in back into what was the ultimate purpose, was to bring the science and technology of hydroponics to Fort Heights, but also to show that good things can come out of communities like that. And in order for that to be, because that's how it all started for me, was I wanted to change the narrative of what's coming out of these communities. And in order for that to happen, the thing that changes that narrative has to be in the community,
Right.
to come out of the community. And so it just allowed me to just sharpen sharpen my focus. And so I jumped right in, working directly with community centers in the Southland of where I come from that had food pantries. And so I started growing exclusively for the food pantries and for the markets, and working directly with the people that are working directly with the people,
Yeah,
and
talk to me
growing.
about that, because I understand a lot of food pantries end up having issues with refrigeration where fresh produce is a challenge. So, how did
Mhm.
you overcome that, and did it require them to have refrigeration, or were they immediate distribution, or?
It was some of it was immediate distribution, some of it was refrigeration. The beauty, again, of this kind of environment was that I would harvest the day of delivery. So they're literally getting produce that was harvested that day. And so it ultimately goes, and I always did it on a day where they were doing the delivery that day. So I would literally bring it to them, and they were people were taking it right out of the pantry. Or I would even grow heads that were still alive that still had the root system on it, and so people are literally getting live plants to go home with. So in
So,
that part became easy in that way because it was an immediate distribution. And the places that weren't immediate, they had refrigeration, they had refrigerated trucks, and they were, a big enough of nonprofit to where they had things in place to do the work that they needed to do.
I think you have a unique insight, having come from culinary and now growing for food pantries, right? Talk to me about how the highest nutrition food that's grown can be given away or distributed through food pantries, or it can fetch a premium market price at a high end restaurant. But there's this whole missing component of, middle America purchase cycle that is very challenging as a grower to connect with.
Well, and I think part of that is like, for instance, restaurants, they want something exclusive. They want something that nobody else can get but them, or they want the best of something. And when you're a grower, like an urban grower, urban farmer, whatever the word that you want to use, where you a small scale farmer, you can do those more niche things for restaurants and still grow things for like a large scale distribution. Particularly what we try to do, this is the science of it as well, grow product that requires the same environment. So I'm not going to grow a warm weather crop in an environment that's suited for a cool weather crop. And so when you're looking at those two, that's kind of how can I serve both and still be able to do what I need to do with the same thing. So often with the restaurants, it was more of like an experimental, like red vein sorrel or something that was more decorative, or we grew edible flowers for a bar as well, and so they would get their edible flowers from us. And so it's just kind of trying to find a way to do it all, even with the farm that we have, tying it to the work that we're doing and the choices we make to move us forward is partnering with communities and with organizations that already have an infrastructure of already doing certain things that the farm can assist them in. There's an HVAC, there's plumbing, there's electrical, there's also the farming, and then there's also harvesting, and there's packaging. So there are a lot of different pieces to the business. And when the partnerships with the food pantries, it was about they already have something in place. Let's work with them because the logistics, we can't do the logistics. They could do the logistics because they already have the logistics built into their operating, how they operate. And we wanted to make sure it wasn't a burden because when people are looking at doing something different and something new in an area where it's never been done, oftentimes it looks like an impossible thing to do. For instance, bringing hydroponics to Fort Heights, it seems like an impossible thing to do. And why would you want to do that in the first place, right? People would think. And so often, so when people look at it, they figure it's a heavy lift. And so the partnerships that we choose to go with and the organizations that we work with have that infrastructure so the lift isn't so heavy for them. And we try to make sure that they understand you have this already built into it. It's just a matter of reskilling, which is a positive because you also do workforce development. So let's reskill people using this farm as a training ground, which is the direction that we're going in now with the business, is getting farms in these communities that are owned and operated by the communities that can serve multiple purpose, because it's a farm, it does HVAC, electrical, so it can do all of these different things with one farm. And so we've worked with them to build out programs. There's a project that we just launched and got funding for, which I'm pretty excited about. Is called our She Initiative, which is the Southland Hydroponics Equity Expansion. That's focused primarily on the Southland, Chicago Heights, Fort Heights, Park Forest, Blue Island, Harvey, those areas that people have, kind of forgot about down south, 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 south. And really focusing on bringing hydroponics to those communities to start growing for themselves, to start producing for themselves. But at the same time, we're also training the next generation of HVAC, experts or electrical experts because they're LED lights and there are things for them to learn, and they're already doing this training at these facilities. So now you have something to train, and it's also built-in labor.
I love the
So
integration of two really forgotten industries, right? As you talk about the push to get kids to go to college, and now the trades are lacking, and to be able to offer a training conduit for them. And then ag is forgotten. When you
yeah.
ask young kids sometimes, where does chocolate milk come from? Oh, brown cows. Like
Right.
you really
It's a
have to
cow that ate chocolate
yeah, right. Chicken. Where do you get eggs? So from the store. It's
from the store.
to be able to connect people with their food, which I think we're all going to have to become better versed at, and then also to provide, on the job training and skills,
Mhm. Yeah,
adoption.
and one of the things that we found also, some of the work that I do is job readiness training and workforce development for formerly incarcerated or underemployed or people that have never had a job before but want to get into the workforce. Ag and it's an industry that's forgiving, that you can actually excel and have your own business and be successful at, and it's not like a menial. It's something that is, meaningful, and it's an industry that's very forgiving for those that may have criminal records. And so that's really a big part of why the initiative for me is so important in these particular areas, because unfortunately, a lot of the participants at these community centers have backgrounds. They have criminal backgrounds. They have something on their record, and they feel as though that there is nothing that they can do because of that. And that's what I love about ag and urban farming, and in this industry, hydroponics specifically also, is that you can have all those things and still go into this industry and be
Yeah,
successful.
that's a good point, right? Is low barriers to entry and non-judgmental. It's something that you literally can put seed in the ground, whether you have acres or whether you have a windowsill, and turn that into a business, whether
And
it's
turn it into a business.
selling botanicals, whether it's growing for restaurants or
You can get a 5 shelf cart or a 5 shelf system and do microgreens on each one of those and have $100,000 a year business,
yeah,
because
it,
it's such a
a couple of
fast
micro.
turnaround. It's a fast turnaround, and you could find businesses, these high-end restaurants. They also want to be able to support small farmers. So you have that. You have these organizations that are looking to support small farmers, and they have. So and that's what I try to get across to them. It's like, don't let that thing deter you from being an entrepreneur. Don't let that deter you from being in this industry. Don't let that deter you from becoming an HVAC tech or electric, like, because those things are available to you.
100%. You touched on a couple of the different partnerships, but can you talk about the partnerships a little more, and how that's really elevated Ditto Foods to the next level, finding these organizations to work with?
Yeah, it is. Again, it gets you directly into the community. And what our partnerships, we wanted to make sure that we were partnering with organizations that we believed in. The work that they were doing was actual, authentic, impactful work that they're doing in the community. And also, I wanted to make, for me, it's targeted, because it's targeted to the Southland specific, because it's home for me. And so I'm one of those people, like, take care of home first and then everything else. And what ultimately I want Fort Heights to be the model of what can happen when people actually invest in these communities. So our partnerships are companies and agencies and businesses and municipalities that are actually doing those things and that want to bring something different, because it also is kind of a weird thing to go into like, the inner like Fort Heights, for instance, and I want to be like, hey, let's do a hydroponic farm here at the school. And the kids are like, what the hell is that? I'm not going to be a farmer. I want to do, and trying to get them to understand that, and broke my heart to veer a little bit. I was working with one of the schools, which is one of my partners, the school district where I went to school, my middle school. And I went back to them and to work with them to teach hydroponics to the kids there that they had a garden club. And I had kids that were in the garden club that had never had like a strawberry. Kids that had never had like actual lettuce that wasn't like on a burger or something like that. Like they were like a salad,
Imagine.
like
Yeah.
lettuce. And like it still like makes me like want to cry to think about that little boy's face when I was trying to get him to have, because I was teaching him about food that you have at home and how you can use that food to grow more food. And so we was of course talking about the seeds on a strawberry, on the outside of the strawberry, and then all this. And so I was like, we were trying the food, we were talking, eating the food, and this little boy like he was like, I've never had a strawberry. And like he was putting it in his mouth, and it was just his reaction to it and reaction to other vegetables was just like so heartbreaking, because he was like, oh, I'd never eat anything like this before.
And again, and one of the reasons that we started this initiative was our 100K in 10 years initiative. We want to give away 100,000 free seed kits in the next 10 years. Visit our website, beetsbedsbrowns.com. Under free seed kit, register for a seed kit. Right now we have a chaos kit. We have dill, we have lettuce, and we have carrots. We'll send those to you free of charge in the contiguous 48. It's Christmas time. You want to give somebody a nice gift, sign them up. You want to grow your own food, sign up. We want to make sure that as many people as possible are growing. That's why we started this initiative. It's why we talk to people like Derek, and we couldn't be prouder of the things that he's doing throughout the Southland. What do you say, right? You're in this classroom, kids haven't touched natural produce. You're in high schools, kids, it's not cool to farm, right? How do you provide this job path and this career opportunity to kids at that level? What do you say to kids from the Southland?
I think that it's finding the right way to introduce it. And for instance, with the setup that we have, it's cool. Like when you walk inside, the lights come on, you see the rows of food, and you're just like, whoa, this is really cool. You hook them. They're hooked into what of all of it. And and then it's about taking them through the whole process and finding the thing. Because some people may love one aspect of it than another. The kids, they all like different things. Some kid may love seeding, putting the seeds in the little pods, because it's that monotonous, it's that thing that they really love to do. So it's finding the things that they love to do and that they're good at, and trying to find a way to connect that to desire, I guess. Like, what is that? Like, if you're somebody who really likes to take a seed and put it into a puck and just doing that over and over again, what does that mean? That's a kid that is detail oriented. That's a kid that, likes consistency. Those are the things you have to kind of look beyond what's happening and try to find a way to connect, because they don't think that they are, a lot of the kids, they didn't think that they were the smart kids, or they didn't think they were the ones that can be a strategic thinker. Like, what is that? It's like, oh, let me tell you exactly what that is. How when you do this, and this, and you're like, maybe I should, that's being a strategic thinker.
Yeah.
And the good thing about what I do and where I do it is that when I tell these kids that I went to this school, I'm from this school, like there are teachers that are, all retired that I was when I was there, because it was, 103 years ago. But they're like, this is the school. I walked this street to get to this school. I used to live right over there, and showing them that there is a way to do this and be successful at it and have fun and connect to community and to connect to your spirit and connect to all of it. And so it's just about finding the thing when you're taking them through all of those things, and you can see that the light that lights up with kids when they get to do certain things. I was an elementary school teacher also. And so, and that's what I loved about the elementary, like third and fourth grade was I loved third and fourth graders because they're curious, but they think they know a little something. So they're bold enough to try to think for themselves at that time, but they're still impressionable and then you can challenge them a little bit more. And so you just had to find that thing when you're taking them through the process and they'll show you because they're kids. They show you that everything is there and just find to take that. And so now how do you take that thing and show them that that thing is valuable?
We got time for one more question, and I hope this isn't a curveball, but you talked about being able to change the flavor and based on light patterns and whatnot. And we're in the ground farmer, so you always talk about terra noir and the different flavors that come from the soil. How are you able to impact those different flavors, and what strategies do you use?
So because of the different um, pivots that we had to do, there was a project that we were doing to really start to do the research on making those changes and doing it. But in the pivoting, it just didn't make sense to do the research and to jump into it and to really be able to speak to it with authenticity because I've done it myself. And so I just know process and I know that you can utilize these things. And there are things that we've done to where I wanted to get like my red butterhead to be a darker red to where it's like almost purple. And so I would just leave the lights, leave the red lights on, give them a little extra red light to darken those leaves. And so it's those little things that I would do that I knew how to change, but to
Or
like
even
play with.
aesthetics, yeah, even the look and feel of it, you can
Yeah,
change with
yeah,
the.
yeah. So I have yet to jump into the nerding out on that part of it, but
There's a time and a place
it'll come.
in the
It'll
future.
come.
Yeah. Well, Derek, tell everybody where they can find you and connect with you and buy your produce.
Absolutely. So as of right now, you can our website, dittofoods.com, everything is there to show you and to tell you what we have going on. We are also working with, there's different communities that community centers and agencies that we're working with. So find a community center that's close, donate. That's what if you want to where to buy produce, wherever you buy produce and just take it to somebody that needs it. To me, that's buying my produce because you're giving it to people that need it. And there are definitely some communities out here where I'm from. Cornerstone Community Development Corp is one of those partners that we're working with. And just find somewhere. There are agencies in every single community that needs something. Just go ask them, what do you need, and find it for them.
Thank you for your time, Derek Drake of Ditto Foods, dittofoods.com. Look him up, learn more, connect with him if you're in the Southland, buy his produce, make sure you're giving it away. And we appreciate you closing out season 6 with us. I'm going to pull you into the green room while I close out the show. If you got a couple minutes, I'd love to cut it up with you a couple minutes more.
Absolutely. And you can find, we're on the socials also, like the Instagram, the TikToks, and the Facebooks, and those things. So you can look me up.
Thanks again, Derek. All right. The end of season 6, Bittersweet with Derek Drake of Ditto Foods. My name's Joe Skibby. This is Beets, Beds, and Browns. We're trying to give away 100,000 free seed kits in the next 10 years. Visit our website, beetsbedsbrowns.com. Register for your free seed kit. We'll ship anywhere throughout the contiguous 48. Give it as a gift. Get it for yourself. Again, beetsbedsbrowns.com. Visit the free seed kit page. Register for either a chaos seed kit, dill, carrot, or lettuce. And remember, happy planting.